Just sitting here waiting for the fellow that's supposed to get on the hangout with me. And if he doesn't show up pretty soon, I'm going to end this thing. I'll give it just a couple more minutes. We started out yesterday with Genesis chapter 3. And we were discussing this thing about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we got off into Ezekiel. End up Ezekiel chapter 31, verse 9, I believe it was. And then we got into a discussion that was actually chasing a rabbit. And we chased the rabbit, and we found out the rabbit hole is a little bit deeper than we expected. So we ended up extending our study, or at least our reading, last night to today from Ezekiel 26 to Ezekiel 34. I believe it's Ezekiel 26 to Ezekiel 34. And it goes beyond that, I imagine, because the whole thing is a unit, and it's a continuation of a thought. And here's what we were discussing. Now the serpent, pardon me, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. Now, God didn't say that. If you look back in chapter 2, in verse 16 and 17, he was talking to Adam, not Mrs. Adam. In chapter 2, verse 16 and 17, well, in chapter 2, the whole thing, Mrs. Adam wasn't even there yet until the end. And I have a suspicion, and we were discussing this last night a little bit, I have a suspicion that Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, 24, and 25, when that takes place there, actually 22, 23, 24, 25, when Mrs. Adam was created out of the rib that the Lord took from Adam's side, that between the chapter 2, verse 25 to 3, verse 1, there is an extended period of time that's not given. And that's, I think, the reason why the Lord broke the chapter, broke it there with a chapter. Now, why do I say that? Because sometimes the Lord does that. John chapter 5. I believe it's John chapter 5. No, John chapter 5, verse 43. Now, notice the punctuation marks. I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. There's a colon there. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. The first clause there is, of course, broken by that colon. And that colon represents a period of time. It's approximately 2,000 years or more. Therefore, punctuation marks, chapter headings, verse markings, paragraph markings, all that stuff can signify breaks in time, breaks in thought, breaks in reverse of thought. And I think that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25 to Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 is an implied break in time. This is what we were discussing, not that particular thing, but we were discussing elements and things surrounding this fall of man. Back to Genesis chapter 3, when Satan said to the woman, "Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden." The Lord said, "Of every tree of the garden, thou singular, first person singular, talking to Adam, thou mayest freely eat. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." So it wasn't the woman that caused sin to come on all the universe. It was the man. And because man was they call it the federal head and all this theology stuff, he was the first Adam. What happened to him affected the entire creation at that point. Now at that point, he only died spiritually. Eventually, he died physically. Now, we don't know for sure how long it was from the fall to his death, but it says 930 years. Adam lived 930.
Call from Gary.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm sorry. It's going to be a little bit later. I'm running up to get that book.